Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Talk. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about being called into ministry. Have you ever felt like the Lord is maybe speaking to you about being in the ministry? Maybe He's put on your heart to take a pastor position or be called to evangelize or maybe be a youth pastor or a worship pastor or whatever the ministry is. There's so many different ministries. Ministry is not only church ministry, but that's a big part of it. A lot of times when we say called into ministry, that's what we're talking about. How do you know when you're called? How do you know when the Lord's speaking to you about being a minister of the gospel? We're all called to share the gospel. If you are a Christian, if you are a believer, you are called to share the gospel. But there's a difference between being called to be a pastor, whether it's a pastor of a church, a pastor of a youth group, of a worship team, of a young adults ministry, or an evangelist. Today, I just want to kind of go over just a little bit about the way that I was called into the ministry. When we were very young, newly married, about 20 years old, I remember our pastor, he was speaking and he said, hey, the lady that's over our youth ministry right now, she is stepping away. She has said that there is somebody else. The Lord's put it on her heart that there's somebody else that's supposed to take the ministry from this point. So she had stepped away from being the youth minister, at that point there really wasn't a youth group. It was more of a Wednesday evening, almost like a Sunday school class, but it was just held on Wednesday evenings where the youth would just go to class. And so she heard the Lord speak to her and said it's time for somebody else to take on this role. And I don't know how she may have struggled within herself with this. I don't know, but she laid it down, moved on to some other things. And I began to wonder, because I didn't have a youth group of my own, when growing up. So I began to just wonder, like, Lord, what are they going to do? What's the youth ministry going to do? And I remember hearing the Lord and I didn't really even know that it was Him. I just heard in my spirit, I heard in my mind, I want you to do it. And I thought, me? I can't. That's not what I do. And I just kept feeling this overwhelming urge, to say yes to that. And so I began to pray about it. I'm going to seek the Lord about, like, Lord, is this really you? Is this really you? So I went to my pastor and I'm like, hey, I feel like the Lord's wanting me to take on this role as the youth minister. I said, I don't know anything about what I'm doing. I just feel like the Lord wants me to do it. And so we talked about it, and they put me in as the youth minister, and we grew into the youth pastors of the church, and we served there for about 10 years. And so many times when there's a call in your life in ministry, it's not, sometimes there will be someone who will, prophesy over you and say you're called for this or that. And guys, if that bears witness with you, if it's a confirmation in your spirit, if it confirms that in you, then you know that person is speaking truth. Sometimes people will want to call people in the ministry. The Lord is the one who sets people in place. And so many times it's that still small voice that when there's the opportunity, it's like, I want to do that. Sometimes it's a subtle thing to where it's just like, hey, I love kids and I love being around kids and I'm good with kids. So it's like, why not be a children's pastor, right? Well, that wasn't me, but I did love being around the teenagers because I wasn't very much older than them. I felt like I could relate. But even more than that, greater than that, I felt that the Lord wanted me to do it. And so I just had a yes in my spirit to the Lord. And sometimes that's all that being called into ministry really is. It's just us saying yes to doing what the Lord wants us to do in this season. So many times people think of being called into ministry as like this, we're being puffed up, or, now we're this, or we're on this level, or whatever. And that's not what it is at all. When you're called into ministry, you are called to serve those people you're ministering to. So it's not about, hey, look at me, I have a title of such and such pastor. If you have title of such and such pastor, it means that you are serving those people. And so that's what pastoring is, whether it's a church pastor, local pastor, a small groups pastor, worship team pastor, youth pastor, whatever it is, because you don't find those titles in the Bible. You just find pastor. So how do you know you're called into ministry? Well, the Lord will place it on your heart and on your mind, and you'll begin to have a love for those people greater than maybe the love for other people. It's kind of like, you see them and you just have a heart for them, whether it's children, it's toddlers, it's youth, worship, young adult, senior adult, whatever it is, you have a heart for people. And many times if you have a heart for all people, many times that's the church pastor. He is pastoring every single age. When the Lord has put something on your heart for a specific group of people, like in my case, it was the youth group, then you know that the Lord is speaking to you about that. Now, sometimes we can get in pride and we can say, I want to do everything. But many times that's not the case. Most of the time, the people who are called are the ones that don't really want to be involved in everything. The Lord puts that in their hearts and on their minds. And so that's what they begin to do. They begin to just do what the Lord has placed on their heart. So if you're feeling like you're called into a ministry, go speak to your pastor. If you feel like there is a calling of God on your life to do something, and maybe it's out of your ordinary, maybe it's out of your box, go speak to your pastor about it, because just maybe there is an opening in your church that you're needed there. Or sometimes the Lord just places a desire in your heart to do something, and then you think it's one thing, but then once you go and you speak to your pastor, it's like, oh wow, there is another opening somewhere else in the church that I wasn't aware of that needed somebody, and I can fulfill that. And so sometimes the calling of God in our life is just that intense, that urgency to preach, to speak, to teach. And sometimes you don't really know what it's toward, but the Lord will reveal that. And as you speak with your pastor and as you begin to work that thing out, then the Lord will eventually reveal exactly where it is. But sometimes it's just like, you just know that he wants you to be a part. You know that he wants you to be doing something for him. And so you say, yes, Lord, I will do whatever it is you're wanting me to do. Many times that's the very beginning of operating in your calling, is just saying, yes, I will clean the church. I will help mow the grass. I will help in this ministry. I'll help in that ministry. Many times it's like when you have a yes, the Lord takes that yes, and then eventually a lot of times it gets pinpointed down to what it is, where your calling is, as far as like, if you're a youth pastor at heart. I know some youth pastors who, and they've been youth pastors for years. When I started youth pastoring 24 years ago almost, and like I said, I haven't been a youth pastor that long. I was youth pastor for about 10 years, and we transitioned over into the worship ministry. But at that point, 23, 24 years ago, I knew some youth pastors then who are still youth pastors today. And so at the same church. So, these other ministries are not stepping stones. They have a call on their heart. They have a special place in their heart for a certain group of people. And if that's you, maybe that's where you're supposed to be. Maybe if the Lord's put youth on your heart, then step into it and just say, yeah, I will try it. If you've never done it before, you can be like me and just go to your pastor and say, hey, I feel like the Lord wants me to do this. At our first church where we were youth pastors, we had an awesome pastor. He knew that I knew nothing about ministry, and he's like, hey, let's move you into youth minister and see where it goes from there. And he took me under his wing, and I shadowed him, and I learned how to be a pastor from my pastor. And many times that's what you need. I mean, it's great if you have schooling, if you have training, but so many times the Lord calls someone who just has a heart for people and has a heart to say yes, and they're in a totally different field. They haven't been trained, but they love people, and they know the word, and the Lord will anoint them to teach the word in the way that group of people needs to hear it. And that might just be you. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, man, I'm not real sure where it is that the Lord wants to use me, but I want to be used, I have a yes in my heart, then go speak to your pastor and see where is it that the Lord wants to use you. And I will say this: get into a church, get into a local church, and plant yourself there and stay there and begin to have a yes in your heart serving in that local body, because that's important to be a part of the local body. Because if you're constantly going around and around trying to find where it is the Lord wants you to be, if you're not planted in that local body, it's hard for the Lord to use you out and about, because you don't have a covering, for one thing. You're not planted in a ministry. And many times when other people see that, other pastors see it, other leaders, and they see that you're not planted in a ministry, you're not from a local church, but you're just going all over the place, they may begin to wonder why, what's wrong, what's going on, that this person is not a part of a local body, but they're just traveling all over the place. Because we've been there where we traveled, but we always made sure that we were a part of a local body. So in times when we were not involved specifically in a worship ministry or a youth ministry at a specific church, we attended that church, and we had a covering, and that was our place. And if we weren't out ministering, we were there. So I think that's important, that you have a local body that you're a part of, and then you minister out of the overflow of what the Lord's doing in your life. So I hope this has been a help to you guys. I know we really didn't dive deep into anything, but I just wanted to be an encouragement. So if you feel like you've been called into the ministry in some sort, go speak with your pastor about it. And you never know. Maybe the Lord's calling you into something deeper or something higher or something more than what you're doing currently. Guys, if this is the type of content that you like, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified of when we do more videos. Make sure that you like the video and share it as well to maybe some of your friends who are wondering if they're being called into ministry. So guys, I'll see you guys next time on Church Talk.